So let's bring all this art talk back to the world of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and NFTs. Because for about as long as there's been blockchain, there have been artists who have used contemporary art to explain blockchain, and conversely, used blockchain to explain contemporary art. And some of these early blockchain art projects are really interesting. The first gallery exhibition of blockchain art that I can find was this. The exhibition was titled The Human Face of Crypto Economies, and it was organized by Furtherfield. They followed that up in 2017 with this exhibition, New World Order, which was accompanied by an excellent book titled Artists Rethinking the Blockchain that puts into print a lot of the art ideas that were being explored through blockchain at the time by artists like Rob Myers and others. In later episodes of this series, we'll talk more about some of these early works, but for now, I'll just talk about what I know best. Over the 15 years that I've been an artist, I've done two things. Like Yves Klein, I've also been interested in making art out of extremely minimal physical substance. But unlike Yves Klein, I haven't done it to make an art that's disconnected from our temporal world. I've done it because I'm trying to represent a real world which feels increasingly insubstantial. Like this sculpture depicting a conversation. It's made out of water vapor because it had stopped feeling like conversations were made of anything substantial. Or this sculpture, a volumetric shape that seems like you should be able to touch it, but it's really just a two-dimensional string spinning around very quickly because someone close to me had died, but it felt like they were still there somehow. The other thing I do is I take old art ideas and I remake them using new technology. I do this because I think it helps me understand both the art idea better and the technology better. Like this sculpture from 2014, which takes an artwork by Sol LeWitt and turns it into computer code, because I was interested to know if you could still sell an idea at a time when ideas apparently wanted to be free. And this sculpture, which takes Turner's slave ship and turns it into a little robotic puddle of velvet ropes, because I think an art gallery is a silly place to have a conversation if you're trying to change the whole world. But in 2017, both of these things that I do came together in one piece, a piece I called The Digital Zones of Immaterial Pictorial Sensibility. See, when I saw Bitcoin, I saw the ideas of Yves Klein writ large. A Bitcoin is a sensibility, a feeling, an idea of financial value that has no reference to the material world. And like Yves Klein's artworks, enough people believe in that idea that its value becomes fact. Klein would have loved it. Like in Klein's works, Bitcoin sees the physical as an impediment to true value. Paper money can be counterfeited, reprinted, or quantitatively eased. But a store of value that's nothing but a promise has none of those problems. And so it occurred to me that just like Klein was able to push Malevich's ideas about abstraction even further through technical innovation, I could push Klein's ideas about immateriality even further through the technical innovations of blockchain technology. A version of the zones on blockchain, I thought, would be the completion of art history's push towards immaterialization. Now, not only would the idea be fully immaterialized, but the very token that denotes it would be too. The ritual which transfers the token would also be immaterialized, and the ritual which burns that token would be immaterialized as well. No meeting at the River Seine for us. The different ideas of ownership, legal ownership, and intrinsic ownership would all be conferred through immaterial blockchain transactions. So there were a couple things I had to do to create the artwork beyond just the coding. First of all, the artwork, or the idea of the artwork, had to actually be something. Klein's zones were, remember, according to him, imbued with the deep blue that he was famous for. But I wanted my artworks to contain a different blue, mostly because Klein literally patented his own shade of blue, and I was very keen on not infringing on the patent rights of Mr. Klein. So I went out seeking my own shade of blue to place in the digital zones. I wanted this shade of blue to be special, so I went traveling, and I went here to the north coast of Prince Edward Island to create color studies. And after spending a considerable amount of time studying and debating, I settled on a shade of blue representing the exact horizon between Skye and the Gulf of St. Lawrence, exactly 3 hours before civil twilight. I took a photo at that time, but I deleted it because the token was never meant to represent the image. The token was meant to represent the idea. And the second thing that I had to create was belief. I felt like to do this, I'd have to clearly state my intentions and make an argument that I'd invested a considerable amount of time and research and a big chunk of my career into doing this. So I wrote a white paper and I explained a lot of these ideas and how they had come to me. And that white paper, which I called the blue paper, naturally, is still available. And you can look at the original post on GitHub. And I think it's also a pretty good blockchain explainer for anybody who's coming at blockchain from the world of conceptual art. I coded the contract. The contract was a modified ERC20 token, as was the style at the time. And as is now standard in ERC 721 tokens, it has a burn function, but in keeping with Klein's ritual, anyone who burns the token also burns half the ETH that I received for it initially. I listed the token on Etherscan as IKB, an homage to Klein's patented color, International Klein Blue. And finally, on August 30th, 2017, I presented the digital zones of immaterial pictorial sensibility in an art gallery. After a 90-minute lecture at Interaccess Media Arts Center in Toronto, the contract went live, and at 8:38 p.m. on that night, the very first IKB token, token ID number 0, was transferred. Shortly after that, the very first IKB token was burned, and to this day, I still have no idea who did it. But if you're out there, I hope it was a very good experience for you. So it's time to wrap things up. In the blue paper, I made a few predictions about how I thought blockchain tokenization would affect the art world, and I wanted the IKB token to be a pure distillation of what blockchain could represent for art. What it represents is, in some ways, complete transparency about what Yves Klein, myself, and others think art is. Because in a lot of ways, an artwork has never been just about the physical thing. Any artwork is a token that connects you to an idea about a long past empire, or an idea about the person who created it, a political idea, or an idea about the nature of art itself. So what does this say about NFT artworks? I don't know. All this history doesn't mean that all NFTs are actually brilliant exercises in conceptual art. No, a lot of them are just as bad and just as shallow as skeptics might say they are. But this history does give us some context that artists can use to push forward and create new ideas. And maybe those ideas will be ones that really are best suited to be expressed through digital transactions. This art history shows us that there is actually a strong foundation to say that NFTs do something that was a natural part of the evolution of art, separating their idea from their physical manifestation. And now maybe we can all move on to judging the ideas that are behind them. This video essay was about the basic premise of NFTs, that art could be a non-physical expression. In some of the episodes we have coming up, we'll talk about other ideas in contemporary art and how they have found expression through blockchain technologies. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you then. Goodbye.